Now, Anzac Day is only a few weeks away, with this year actually marking the 110th anniversary of the Gallipoli landings. And for the last few years, thanks to the Australian Remembrance Foundation, there's been a tribute concert at Sydney's Town Hall on the eve of Anzac Day. The event's become so popular that it's been moved to the Opera House forecourt this year, which is going to make for a spectacular scene. I want to bring in Sir Peter Cosgrove now. He's the former Governor-General, of course, and former Chief of Defence. And, of course, he is the patron of the Australian Remembrance Foundation. Thanks for joining us, Sir Peter Cosgrove. I've got to get your thoughts on this event on the eve of Anzac Day. Explain to us the significance of it and how it's come about.
Well, Anzac Day itself, of course, is chock-a-block, and we don't want to stifle the opportunity we get to have a major event in the greatest harbour in the world, the gateway to Australia, and a place where the war came and for a brief period right into the harbour in 1942. And this year, of course, 80 years since the victory in the Pacific, which marked the end of World War II. So in that respect, we can say that there's extra significance to opening up this concert for the venue of Sydney Harbour. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to show our marvellous harbour, but in a commemorative sense. We lost 21 sailors killed that night of the attack by the Japanese mini-submarines in Sydney Harbour. They were on a ferry called the Cuttable, and they were using it as a dormitory out in the harbour, and the Japanese submariners fired to try and hit the USS Chicago. Didn't get the Chicago, but got the Cuttable with loss of life of everybody aboard. So there's a poignancy about the concert being watching solemnly over that place, over reasonably close to Mrs Macquarie's chair.
Absolutely. And, of course, even when you go back to the Gallipoli, of course, the eve of Anzac Day is something that's very much worth contemplating, because on that occasion, 110 years ago, our diggers would have been on the high seas preparing for a landing that they knew was going to be difficult. It's a very, very evocative time thinking about what was going to unfold at first light the next morning. Tell us what sort of a ceremony it's going to be. Obviously, it's such a spectacular location, and it'll be happening as the sun goes down in the west.
Well, it's one thing it's not. It's not going to be modern pop music. It's going to be the traditional hymns and musical performances. It's going to be solemn, it's going to be scenic, and it's going to be done by some marvellous musicians. I mean, little Patty, one of her most famous touch point with the Defence Force was she was performing in Nui Dat in Vietnam on the afternoon that the Long Tan battle started, only a cricket ball's throw away from the wire. And her concert had to be foreshortened because the artillery going out in massed volumes wouldn't allow the concert to be heard. And all the diggers were needed to run back to their places of operational duty. So little Paddy's there, Normie Rowe will be there, Christine Arnoux will be there. I mean, performers from the military, bands, and the great scenery that we will see of Sydney Harbour, pausing for that moment to remember that war not only affected the men and women who were in the uniform, but the civilians who were terrorised and terrified on that poignant evening in June 1942.
Wonderful stuff, Sir Peter. Thanks so much for joining us. Sir Peter Cosgrove there from the Australian Remembrance Foundation, talking about this event on Anzac Day Eve. Now, you can go to this. Tickets are free, but you've got to book. But you can get those tickets if you go to lestweforget.org.au, lestweforget.org.au, and you could be at the Sydney Harbour, at the Sydney Opera House forecourt there in Sydney Harbour on the eve of Anzac Day.